Hoist the black flag high, let the cables hum. Code and cannon ready, futures beating like a drum. Charts are drawn in circuits, treasure maps in AI. We're sailing for the edge where bold ideas never die.
Hey everybody, welcome to the very first episode of Pirates Only, a show where we invite three founders working in a similar space to all come in and discuss topics of the future. And today we have a really exciting topic, one that I've wanted to do for a while. In fact, ever since I heard Will, who's on this podcast, do it with Sean Purry on My First Million. If you haven't heard that episode, it's fantastic. Episode of the same name, believe as well, on ocean being the new space. It's a topic that I've thought a lot about even before hearing that, but then when hearing it, it kind of cemented to me that there's so much opportunity in the ocean, and it just seems as though, not that no one's paying attention, but some of the stats we'll get into, fewer people are paying attention to it than I believe should be. And I thought that bringing three founders that are actively building in the ocean, both above and below the surface, is the right way to discuss this topic. So let's jump right in. Let's start with introductions. Nelson, if you want to kick off, then we'll go David, then Will. Give a little bit of introduction about yourself, what you're working on, and a little bit about the company.
Yeah, I'm Nelson Mills, co-founder and CEO of Vatn Systems. My background, I actually grew up homeschooled on a sailboat, so I've always been really connected to the water. Traveled all over the Caribbean, and when I started my career, I was doing an academic career, getting a PhD in political theory, political science, and then I realized I really didn't want to be an academic, so I dropped out and got into the startup space. Was building a software company. Wasn't that excited about it, so went and joined a electric boating startup building a couple of different electric boats out in Seattle. Was in that space for a while. And then I got my MBA, got into investing, was in VC for 3 years. And then I was like, I really need to start my own company and do my own thing. And I was working on a couple different maritime ideas. And then I met this fund called Decisive Point, and they're like, hey, you should look at the underwater defense space, and started digging in with them, talking to a few customers. And that is the genesis of Vatn. So Vatn is all about building low-cost autonomous underwater vehicles that can carry a variety of payloads, be built at large scale, and are a true force multiplier, so providing the swarming and collaborative autonomy architecture, so one person or a small number of people can deploy tens, hundreds of vehicles.
Amazing. Love it. David, how about you?
Sweet. Yeah. Howdy. My name's David Zagaynov. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Poseidon Aerospace. At Poseidon, we're building unmanned sea gliders for cargo logistics and other defense use cases, such as ISR and like potential kinetics platforms. Sea gliders are also known as like ground effect vehicles or chronoplanes, as they started out in the Soviet Union. Were first built in like the 60s and 70s, and they are vehicles that are essentially flying boats. They fly very close to the surface of the water, and in aerodynamic phenomenon known as ground effect. The air compresses, you get increased lift, decreased drag, and you can carry a lot more. And the tech has been really stopped getting developed with the fall of the Soviet Union, and we are bringing it back. And so, yeah, that's the side mission. We're going to move a lot of things in the oceans.
I'm excited to talk about more about that. That's going to be that's great. Will, last but not least.
Awesome. Cheers, Matt. So I'm Will, one of the founders of Ulysses. And like a bit of background for myself, I'm born and raised in a place called Cork in Ireland, southwest, grew up by the seaside. If I wasn't in the water, I was on it or near it. Growing up, my babysitter was our local lifeguard. My mom would just put me in the wetsuit and like send me down to the beach and put some sun cream on, and that was pretty much my summers. Similar to Nelson, kind of always pining to get back to that. Like, how can I get paid to be on a boat? How can I get paid to be like near the water? Like, how can I get back to this in some way, shape, or form? Went to college in Dublin, and after college started working straight in startups, and always felt like very compelled to be kind of working at the intersection of kind of like public goods, public services, and technology. I was on the founding team of one of the kind of first scooter sharing startups in Europe, and I kind of led our kind of government affairs growth, and we scaled across Europe, became top tier operator in the UK, and were eventually acquired by a larger operator. So had a nice exit there, and then took some time out to kind of consult for other startups that, you know, how to sell to government, how to work with government. I always thought it's very much more rewarding to go see a product like put into the hands of like a government worker, or like in this kind of world, because, you know, who the hell really needs another payroll software? You know what I mean? Like no, not many people, right? Like I think it's much more interesting to build like these kind of like physical goods, solving like critical problems out there. And, you know, naturally cogs were always just turning about the ocean, like what is like the rate limiting factor on like taking advantage of our oceans fully. You know, it's this like tremendous resource that we're going to talk about a lot today. You know, $3 trillion like ocean economy. Like what are like the limiting factors here? What are the hair on fire problems in it? And you know, one thing, like me and kind of some co-founders who had come from a background, one worked for the Red Bull Formula One team, another one building satellites, another one building aerial drones and self-driving cars. We kind of like were, you know, ideating on this space. We initially became very, very interested in the world of ocean conservation as a very clear hair on fire problem. You know, billions of people rely on this every day for their food. We're on track for like a fishery collapse around like, you know, roughly 2050. That's, you know, you don't need to be a genius to realize that's not good. You know, one of the key drivers of this is the loss of marine habitats, and essentially the rate of restoration is not matching the rate of loss. And you have kind of governments around the world kind of panicking about this. So we're like, okay, why don't we just build like some autonomous robots to go and do these ecosystem restoration tasks? So essentially they work, you know, the underwater vehicle, the combined with an integrated surface vehicle, these are deployed and do tasks that divers would basically do. And this is kind of like, you know, this was the genesis, the origins of Ulysses, and this is, you know, more generally what we want to do is be this like automation layer for critical tasks in the oceans. There's not just this kind of seagrass and kelp and coral problem, but there's a lot of problems that in the ocean that we just don't functionally have enough hands for. And I think that's where autonomy can be a pretty helpful tool. So yeah, we're based here in San Francisco, team of 10, and yeah, it's a bit about us.
Love that. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. So as a quick roundup here too, Will, David, you guys are both in San Francisco. Nelson, you're in Rhode Island. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Do you feel like at a high level, are there hubs for what you'd call, I don't know. Here's maybe another question it's maybe a dumb one. Is ocean tech a thing? Is that a phrase that you guys use internally? Is that like or maritime tech, or what's the right phrase that people, what was that?
Yeah, blue tech. Yeah, ocean
blue tech.
I think, yeah, pick your poison.
Yep. What are the hubs do you feel like? Because I love that Rhode Island being one that, you know, I wouldn't think of top of mind, but obviously there's a lot going on over there.
Yeah, I mean, within, you know, a 30-mile radius of us, there are a ton of underwater robotics startups. There's surface vehicle startups. There's sea glider startups. So I would say Rhode Island, you know, that's a plug the ocean state. We have a really burgeoning community here of technology, ocean technology, and it's not a recent or new thing, really. It's something that goes back to the 1800s, right? The first torpedoes in the U.S. were all developed in Rhode Island. A lot of the kind of first submarines too. We still build submarines here. We still build components of torpedoes and a lot of underwater vehicles here. We have the Naval Undersea Warfare Center, the Naval War College, a lot of defense contractors building undersea vehicles. We're near Woods Hole Institute. So this whole kind of Rhode Island Mass area is definitely a center of concentration for underwater technology and surface technology.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like San Francisco, you could argue, is the best destination right now for AI and a lot of compute and chip companies, semiconductor companies. I think it's making a comeback, and I'm kind of curious to hear what David and Will have to say for deep tech and as it relates to defense. And you look at even some of the latest Y Combinator batches, and Y Combinator does a good job of keeping a lot of those founders in that ecosystem after they go through. Do you feel as though there's a shift going in the Bay Area as well for you two gentlemen on the deep tech side?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And I think that like San Francisco and the Bay Area does have like quite a large heritage in terms of like deep tech companies out here. We have like Joby, Archer, Pika, Saildrone in the blue space, And so there are a lot of companies that have like grown pretty large in terms of their R&D and manufacturing just out here. And yeah, like specifically in San Francisco and like the dog patch, like Potrero neighborhoods. There's been a bunch of like startups moving in here, like between like both like ocean tech and some other like deep tech, hard tech companies. Yeah, what were
Yeah,
your thoughts?
I think for me, like, because we started the company in Dublin and then moved out here last year, so I think the biggest thing I've noticed coming from Dublin is just like, actually, I think one of the strongest kind of wins, in the sales of San Francisco is the culture here. It's like a very ambitious culture. You hear people like just talking about things and talking about their, I was, met with this founder in particular. I met him recently now. Some people might say comes across cocky, but I just thought it was interesting. He was like, "Oh yeah, talking about a startup. We just hit 1 million users. We're on track to hit 1 billion. In the next like 2 or 3 years. And like, this is a startup you'd all like know the name of probably. And I was just like, but like just even just talking about 1 billion users, like you never get that in a month of Sundays in Dublin. So like, so it's kind of like interesting. I think this is like one of the things. My ambition level has gone up for sure. Since like coming here, our ambition level, and yeah, I think that's like one of the kind of big wins here. Kind of normal. There's this kind of like healthy competition. Me and David go for beers and we talk about what we're doing, and he's like, I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. I'm going to do that in my domain. So there's this. I think there's this like nice, this kind of nice. Dynamic to San Francisco that I really
Yeah.
appreciate. That.
I think there's a little bit San Francisco. I think California kind of has that as well. In fact, one of the things, I think everybody here was on the Black Flag 100 list. So congratulations, which was really exciting. And that's how we all first got connected too. When we were doing that, I looked at the tallies the other day. We ended up getting close to 700 total founder votes that had voted through the whole process. And what was interesting was seeing how much of a camaraderie there was in the Bay Area, El Segundo too, and even going down south, more than likely there was more founders willing to share from the Bay Area, other companies, even competing companies, than most other places that we were looking at. So I can definitely feel the that shared camaraderie that you get in the Bay Area too. But let's jump into another topic here, or at least the core of kind of what I was kind of leaning with in the discussion. I was doing a little bit of research. I shared this with you guys before. I did it multiple times in ChatGPT and Gemini and all these other ones to kind of verify it. And then it finished minutes before this in the new Gemini 2.5 Pro, and the results came back the same. And that was that you look at 2024 and you look at early stage venture funding towards space tech and blue tech. And aerospace was one of the leaders. It was close to, biotech was leading away, but right up there was space tech and aerospace at about $8 billion in venture funding. And then you go to blue tech, which was harder to get. And I had to do a little bit of manual effort to try to put in some companies there. And I even included Saronic, which obviously raised earlier this year, so not quite in 2024, but even including Saronic's big raise, you're looking at close to maybe $1 billion in funding towards blue tech companies, early stage blue tech companies in 2024. So a multiple, whether or not those numbers are 100% accurate, my guess is that it probably is close to at least feeling 5 to 8 times more funding going into aerospace than ocean tech. Maybe David, let's start with you, just because not that yours is more similar, but I think having that aerospace kind of title in there, how do you feel? I guess, why do you think more venture is going into space than the ocean?
Yeah, so obviously we are an aerospace company as well as like a blue tech company. We're operating in and above the oceans, and so I guess it's something that I probably think about a little bit less. But yeah, I don't know. They're like I think one of the big headwinds with a lot of these like space companies, there's been like a lot of like very well funded launch providers, is like the success of SpaceX, and how that's become like a massive private company, and so they've like very much like shaped the expectations for like the like possible market size here, and I don't think that we've really had one of those like recently in any way, like the like ocean tech space. And so that's probably one of the contributing factors. I'm sure the guys have other thoughts on like what the other ones are.
Yeah, I think like there's partly like historical reasons for this. Like, I mean, I think there's definitely like a geopolitical angle to this. I think, with the Cold War, we had like the space race, and we saw this like insane investment as a percentage of GDP into the space race, right? And it literally pulled forward the technology timelines like 50 years, right? Like we did in like, less than 10 years what people thought we'd do by the turn of the century, right? And then we kind of took the foot off the pedal for 50 years, and we're kind of starting to get back to it now. But so I think that's like definitely a part of it. And I think when you have like that pull forward of technology, then therefore you get like that you had to have NASA to have SpaceX, right? Like but like you do not see NOAA getting the same amount of money as a percentage of GDP that like no NASA's getting, right? Like I think like NOAA's ocean exploration team gets something like it's like $50 million for FY25 to do like ocean exploration. It's like NASA has like a $25 billion budget, right? Like so there's just like complete order of magnitude differences and like the money going to these domains. And I think this is important because government is typically kind of like an anchor customer to pull forwards in these like deep tech technologies. And I think we're seeing a kind of a transition in this century towards there's you're probably familiar with Carl Schmidt Nelson. So like he's got the theory of like land and sea, and we kind of have like some periods in time that are like defined by land, and this century we're moving into like a century that is like defined by like the sea, right? Like the last like wars were like fought in jungles and deserts. The next wars will be fought over oceans, and I think this is going to like position now like DoD is like one of these like anchor customers for companies like the three of ours to fund like these early stage R&D to get these kind of technologies pulled up the technology readiness scale. And I think that will start to pull this forward. And you see this already with like companies like Saronic. Saronic is like maybe the closest thing we have to like SpaceX in the space. Obviously it's, probably like 10 years behind where SpaceX is, but, moving fast. I think that's one part of it. I think one thing the ocean struggles with as well is like the kind of narrative piece, right? The ocean story is a bit diffuse, right? It's like shipping, fisheries, climate, defense, whereas, space is like we're going to the moon or we're going to Mars, right? It's like a very unifying, very like simple story that like can get people excited. I actually think this is like very underappreciated for like the development of technology. Is like how do you tell the story about a space? So I think like the ocean maybe needs a creative director or something like that to like really catalyze people around it. I think defense can be that for some people. I think the climate aspect of it as well, which we're working like pretty heavily on, is like another one for different folks. But I think the kind of story can improve there. Another just factor in this as well is just like it's really fucking hard to build in the ocean, right? Like it's like from an engineering perspective, like it is difficult. Like you have like salt water that wants to eat everything it can. You have to like make things like not leak. Comms underwater is like very difficult. It's like a very changeable environment where the space is kind of different. Now that's not to say space is easy, right? But I'm just saying that like it's like non-trivial to engineer this domain as well. So there's like a few things I would add to it.
I mean, what I heard there is that you said that going in the ocean is harder than going to space. So we'll make sure we make that the title of that segment there. Nelson, I want to get your opinion on that because Will mentioned something that I think is important, is that you look at space, and I think that space had certainly a big pull because of some of the military relationships as it goes to it. And I think that the ocean, I think, is going to be having that pull here. With your company, you're closer probably, especially working directly with some of those customers right now. Do you feel that momentum? And do you think that that's going to be maybe an indicator of pulling blue tech into that world more?
Yeah, I mean, I think Will stated it really well, right? The last 20 years, the United States and much of the world is focused on desert wars, right? Not to quote Doom, but now we're we're going from doing the opposite of Doom. We don't need desert power now. We need water power, right? We need naval power.
The ocean power.
Future ocean power, yeah. Future conflicts are going to take place in the Pacific, and we have let a lot of that technology kind of atrophy. We just haven't really focused on it, right? And a lot of things like underwater vehicles are significantly behind in tech compared to air vehicles and land robots and stuff like that. So there's a lot of progress to be made, and I think it will help energize the larger ocean tech segment. I do think too, like space for a long time has, I think, been this big, wide open market, right? And there were a lot of inefficiencies in launches that like SpaceX identified and was able to really reduce that. I think the big players and big markets in the ocean space, like shipping, for example, or shipbuilding, or fishing, a lot of those are actually hyper efficient industries, right? Not necessarily in terms of their effect on the climate. There's a huge gap there, and I think that's that needs addressing. And but when you look at like the actual like, can you make better ships that trade goods cheaper, faster than what existing industries do? I think it's a much tougher prospect to find some of those inefficiencies and build tech startups that can attack that. And the defense space and in the underwater space, I think there is a lot of those opportunities. And I think also in the climate space, there's a ton of opportunities on that front. And it's like, we we can do a lot better. We can build these cheaper. We can build these at scale, and we can do it with modern technology stacks and modern autonomy. And just even like, think of how many companies are doing, visual based ATR, working on that problem. And then you look at like sonar based ATR. I mean, there's almost no one, right? Like the investment in a lot of this technology has been pretty bad. That's starting to change, and a lot of that funding is coming through the DoD and the Navy, but it's still like we have a lot of work to do.
Do you think that as a collective here, because I mentioned, Will, one of the things I was thinking of was, ocean hasn't necessarily had its unlock the way that SpaceX seemed to unlock so many businesses. And we're going to go break in here shortly on what makes building in the ocean so hard. What made building in space so hard for so long was that just getting to space was just so expensive that it eliminated so much of the opportunity there. Is there a similar unlock to the ocean, or is it less that there's an unlock in a problem that needs to be solved in order to make it happen versus an unlock in potential benefit? So, an obvious example, at least for me, is that, the ocean floor has $20 trillion worth of materials on it. And eventually we get to a point where we can extract those at a certain cost. And now all of a sudden there's a massive pull of demand to start building in the ocean. And we'll solve all the problems that go into it. Maybe David, kind of back to you. Is there like an idea of a technology that you think needs to happen to build in the ocean, like an unlock like SpaceX had? Or do you think it's more of a demand trigger that needs to somehow happen where all of a sudden, and this even maybe more relates on the Poseidon side, where all of a sudden there's just going to be a huge demand or an understanding of either transporting goods or anything like that triggers this momentum and urgency to start building in the ocean?
Yeah, I think like looking at the SpaceX example, like I don't think as demand driven, because if we look at the space companies, there's a lot of like launch providers that are at least attempting to do orbital launch. But in terms of like actual like viable commercial business models up there, I think like the one big one that we've seen is like internet providers. We have like Starlink is incredibly successful. Amazon launching Kuiper, a couple other companies trying to do similar things. But aside from that, like I don't think space has necessarily figured out like what the other markets are. Like we're going to go to the moon, we're going to go to Mars, incredibly exciting. And I think like on a like overall scope, like aside from like internet providers, I think like the big thing in space is like defense. And then going or looking at like what is in the ocean, like Poseidon is very much like a dual use company. On the defense side, we're targeting the really big problem of like contested logistics. Like the Pacific is ginormous. Like the ocean, like so much of the Earth is covered in water, and like getting things to and from in any sort of conflict scenario, especially when like airports are the first things to generally go, is a really big problem. And so I think like between a lot of like us on the call, like the defense thing is like probably one of the biggest like pulls forward in terms of demand. But on the commercial side, what we're doing is we're creating a product that's essentially like a middle ground between like air freight and cargo shipping, like cargo boats being very cheap but very slow, air freight being like 10x the cost, but much faster. And so like the way we're looking at it is like the ocean is an environment where we can offer like a third middle ground product for like coastal and like island transportation.
Yeah, I love that. Let's kind of use that as a little bit of a momentum to go into something you touched on earlier, Will, with why it's so hard to build in the ocean. If a lot of founders listening to this that are not building in the ocean, they're building in very nice controlled environments outside of the water. Maybe starting with you, Nelson, what do you think? Would you say is like the hardest part about building in the ocean, especially with robotics in the ocean?
Yeah, I mean, the hardest part about underwater robotics, I would say, is probably navigation, right? Once you go under, you can't have GPS. I mean, even, a little bit of water, millimeter about on your
Really? So
GPS
that's
is
all it
kind of,
takes. Like you get that far down and all of a sudden you're flying
yeah,
blind, basically.
totally,
Wow.
exactly. So you have to figure out how you are going to navigate, right? You use inertial navigation, some form of that, and then you have to figure out how to aid it and how to do that cost effectively. It's not an easy problem. It's extremely difficult, and then you add on to that you have comms degradation, right? Like acoustic comms are pretty low performance, and a bunch of other factors like visuals don't cameras don't work very well down there. Sonar data is a lot worse than radar data. And you can kind of see how it becomes really hard to navigate and avoid objects. And the good thing is, though, there are less objects to hit than driving around with your car on a highway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as well. Like, isn't like we mapped 100% of Mars, and we have like high resolution data on like 20-ish% of like the ocean floor. So it's like not even if you can like preload the maps there to be like what you're looking out for. Because I mean, one storm comes along and the seabed is a very different place. So it's like if you're doing anything in around that world, it's like maps as well, and then just like salt water as well and pressure. Like actual pressure on the vehicle. You really have to love O-rings if you're like working in this in the underwater domain. So yeah, and biofouling as well. If you're like leaving assets out there for like long period of time, you have to start thinking about that. So yeah, there's a lot, but again, it's exactly in these engineering difficulties is the opportunity, right? Like this is like exactly why it is like a fun space to work in, because you're actually working with your team, solving teams for the first time. You're not like copying what like SpaceX did or Unreal did or whatever. You're some like dudes just like being like figure that out. It's like so I think it's actually very exciting for engineers, especially if they haven't worked in the domain before. I think they, at least we found, like they just like it's just very exciting, very interesting, because of the kind of challenging nature of it.
Yeah. I think the piece that I think is so interesting is maybe there is an unlock. Like, would you say that AI obviously being the buzzword for most of the things that we use for like on our computers and ChatGPT and whatnot, are there some unlocks on the AI side that are going to be helping in blue tech or in robotics or in being able to solve those problems that you just mentioned over the next 5 or so years? Like, is that an unlock that could potentially make all this a little bit easier?
Yeah, for sure. I think like there's like probably like autonomy capabilities for now that we can just pull off like an open source GitHub that like 5 years ago would have been the preserve of like a team within Waymo or something like that, developing like maybe some of these SLAM models. I think there's probably like some adjustments that need to be do. Like Nelson made the point that like at least in the subsea domain, we need to adapt these things for maybe more acoustic data rather than visual data. And so there's like some like adaptation that needs to be done there. But yeah, for sure it's like a tailwind that I think companies in the space can build against.
Yeah, and then in general, like on the engineering side, like being able to like use these tools like really accelerates the speed that which we can like build things like they're in industries where it may be a little bit more developed. There's a lot more like specialized software tools, but for like stuff that we're doing where it's like could be an incredibly niche problem that like we're one of the few people that are encountering, like being able to like quote vibe code some sort of like really quick software like script to like help analyze something where it would otherwise take like a few weeks is like incredibly useful, and like pretty much all of our engineers like use it on a regular basis.
Yeah, if anything, just because of the speed and being able to test and iterate, because you're going to be working on these things on the fly. So being able to quickly get something up is great.
Yeah, very much so.
The one thing that's kind of interesting that you mentioned, Will, was the salt in general. And I think that's something that people forget about. You think of water and you think, oh, electronics and getting wet. Obviously pressure being a big thing, but salt is like a whole other variable that if you're not like working in the ocean, you probably just don't even think about. And my guess is that even for you, David, you're not, necessarily going underwater, but my guess is that you're still having to deal with creating materials or finding materials, sourcing them that can be cheap and light to take advantage of the benefits that you were saying earlier, with like the winds and everything from the ocean. But it has to also be able to withstand salt as it's on the water, landing in the water, but even just flying in those areas has got to be more difficult than even just flying in the middle of a desert, in the middle of land.
Yeah. The sea is definitely a harsh mistress, and like whereas in the desert, if you're flying, you have to deal with some sand. The sea wants to corrode everything, and that like really is like a limiting factor in terms of like material selection. Like you have to make sure that like your components aren't rusting. Much of it as we can ends up being like composite and carbon fiber, which is really like a tech tree that's matured in the past decade. And that's been like really great because not only is like carbon fiber incredibly strong and light, it's also non-corrosive. So yeah, our vehicles are carbon fiber for that reason and large.
Maybe just to wrap up this kind of hard part of the ocean segment, is there any particular one that is either, like if you could say, is the most difficult, and maybe as an alternative answer, the most fun problem to solve? Maybe Nelson, start with you. The most difficult and or most fun one to challenge.
I would still say navigation is probably the most difficult, subsea, not necessarily on the surface. Most fun. Honestly, nav is also pretty fun. So you get to chase vehicles around going in the wrong directions.
And maybe this is kind of a question, a
Yeah.
noob question, but when you're testing these, do you have to go and test them in the ocean? Do you guys have like facilities where you're testing these in like big fish tanks in the middle of your office, or what does like a blue tech startup kind of look like or test these?
Yeah, I mean, you do a bit in simulation. You can do a tiny bit in tanks, like you can test motors and stuff like that, get your buoyancy and center of gravity right. But at the end of the day, like you got to get out there and test. I mean, we test 5 to 6 days a week our vehicles, and like literally, we put a new vehicle in the water, and 2 months later, we had 250 hours of testing on it. Right, like we test an insane amount at Vatn, but we're right on the water, and we're able to iterate super quickly. And I think testing and iteration is super important. One of the benefits I think of starting a hardware company now is just 3D printing and AI tools and all of this allow such rapid iteration of the product.
Yeah, that's awesome. Will, what about you? Favorite and or hardest problem?
I mean, if I had to wave a magic wand for like some like physics research to be done, it would definitely be on like the kind of subsea comms. Like if there's like some like I don't know, uh Black Ops anti-gravity research that we can just like take out of Black Ops and just like try and find like a problem for this like subsea communications problem. It's just like it's nothing we will ever have an R&D budget to like put towards because it's just so like early. But like being able to get more than a few blips a second on from an acoustic modem would be incredible. So that's the one I'd like to wave a magic wand on. And
Which is crazy. I wouldn't have guessed, going into this, that would have been kind of the problem. I would have thought that just like being in water and or the pressure or the salt or those things, but I didn't realize, and I didn't realize that it would just be so quick. Like it's like just below the surface, it almost immediately becomes an issue. Not at like 100 feet would be like a guess that I would have had or something like that.
water's just so dense, compared to air, right? You just so yeah, I think at the surface for like our surface vehicle, like yeah, I think the difficult thing there is again like the water is cruel. Like you have to be ready for very variable sea states. The ocean is notoriously hard to predict from a kind of weather perspective. It can just change like that. So you have to just have like a system that is very very robust and gets a lot of shake testing. So kind of surface support.
Anyone there, David, that wasn't mentioned already for you, maybe being above the water?
Yeah, I think like the intersection of like hydrodynamic to like aerodynamic modeling is like a very like hard problem. and there's like very good sim software that exists, but like that like specific interface is stuff that we're gonna have to like models that we're gonna have to build ourselves. But the fun one is I think like GPS denied like navigation above the water, but in the ocean is a fun problem. And like we get to resort back to some of the methods that like the sailors used to use, where you're literally looking at the stars to like geo position yourself.
Wow. Yeah.
And during the day, you're looking at like where the sun is relative to the horizon. And like right now, we can get within like a few miles during the day, and like a lot closer during the night. But like being able to like operate environments where the GPS isn't available is like a very important problem to solve on the side for sure.
Well, you mentioned one of the graphics that I'll pull up here post recording is, you know, that view of the globe that shows where it's like it's just ocean. Like you turn it and it's like it's just the Pacific. There's nothing else there, and I can imagine that being in the center of that is not going to be the easiest place to navigate.
Yeah, one patch of water looks like any other patch of water for the most part.
The other kind of difficulty that I'm kind of curious about, we have a lot of companies that we run into this with across the board in different sectors or industries, is regulation, like ecological or bureaucratic or anything like that. What are you running into that relates to that? And do you see that being something that could prohibit or kill your startup? Maybe Nelson, starting on your side, especially on the defense piece.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, maritime is way less regulated than air, right? So,
And I wouldn't have guessed that. I would have guessed the opposite, just for whatever reason. I don't know
yeah,
why. Like save the
yeah, I
whales type
mean,
of thing. But
there's definitely some ecological restrictions, right? Like you can't set your sonar above a certain noise level, right? It's like 190 kilohertz or hertz, I don't know. But in general, though, like we don't have to file flight plans with the the Coast Guard or things like that, right? You fly a particular flag and you go off and do things. There can be like restricted zones, but in general, the regulatory burden is really, really low, and that's part of how you can iterate so quickly. I think certain states and countries might have higher regulatory burden than Rhode Island. But in general, it's relatively low. If you're doing some stuff with acoustics, it can get challenging with marine mammal protections. But other than that, it's not bad.
Yeah, I
about
think
you, Will? Yeah.
I could talk all day about this one. Yeah, like for me, uh, one of the biggest blockers to doing anything like nature positive in the ocean is like green tape. It's not like we don't
Which
have
is crazy. Like you're trying to help the problem, and it's like they're pushing you back.
I know one place where we have a customer that is willing to like give us money, and we do what would be one of the largest like seagrass restoration projects in history. And there is a unnamed public official getting in the way of it because of some stupid reason. This is like a global problem. I mean, in the world of ecosystem restoration, what we do, like, it's mainly focused on the seagrass ecosystems. They're great for removing carbon, and they support about 20% of the world's fish stocks. And we basically just like automate all the stages of restoration, collect seeds, plant seeds, map them, that kind of thing, and do it like 2 orders of magnitude cheaper than a human would do it for. So you can do it at like an insane scale then, on like the same budget and in the same kind of length of time. And yeah, like in this world, it's not like the limiting factor is like is generally like green tape in a lot of instances. Like sometimes it's like science in some regions, and like there's ecological factors as well, like they don't get seeds at this time of year or whatever. But I think the general problem in this like world of like nature and the ocean is like all our permitting structures are set up for extractive industries and not regenerative industries. So like if you want to do something on the seabed, you have to get the same permits that a mining company has to get, right? So whereas if you're actually kind of doing the government's job for them, right? Like you're helping them hit these biodiversity targets, but they're still like, you still have to meet all these kind of environmental impact assessments. So I just think the tides haven't shifted enough yet on kind of the regulatory side, and there's increasing push towards this. We're a delegate at the UN Ocean Conference next month a niece, and we'll be speaking with like different governments about this. Like there is more and more governments kind of thinking about how do we like set up permitting structures for regenerative restoration like activities, and then how do they participate in the upside as well, right? Like Bahamas has announced in like the last like year or two about how they want to completely like restore all of their lost seagrasses. They have like one of the largest seagrass meadows in the world. This like at scale, if they like do restoration properly, if they can prove like net new carbon removal and sell those credits, that could be like $1 billion revenue opportunity for a small island, developing state. There are other countries like looking at this, Vanuatu, Tahiti, French Polynesia, all these countries looking into it. So I think it's like something if they can crack right and share the upside with developers. I think wow, what a beautiful outcome that would be to see like fish stocks restored, to see like carbon being drawn down, to see like water clarity improved, and like seeing like the local people participating in the upside as well. I think we've learned a lot from like how to do these projects well, from some of the failings and how we've maybe dealt with permitting in like extractive industries, and how we've kind of cut out local countries in some of these instances. So yeah, the things are it's moving there, but it's still a long way off, and still a lot to go. And yeah, the urgency just doesn't feel met by these people.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
Do you think that changes almost generationally, where it's like I feel like a lot of politics almost change in generations because it's just newer people coming in and then things getting removed or like people moving out? But in California is obviously, I think, maybe one of the harder places to do those. Is that a fair assessment, or maybe not?
Yeah, it is. I mean, yeah, like it's kind of like what that old saying, like science changes one funeral at a time.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
probably
yeah.
say about this domain. I think it's like individual people as well. I think people have like extremely high agency. Like I always go back to Steve Irwin. He Austrian, he's like, was my like childhood hero, and like very much like motivated me to kind of like work in this domain. And like he was like one person, right? And he's like
Yeah.
dead now, right? And like I was at like this gala dinner for like celebrating his life like a few weekends ago. And it's like just like thousands of people in the room donating like hundreds of thousands of dollars to ocean conservation and nature conservation causes because of this one person, right? And like he actually changed some of the laws around
Mm-hmm.
conservation. Australia. So like again, like it's like Elon, the kind of great man theory of history is very much something I would like subscribe to. So I think it's very smart, coordinated teams with like good resources can change these things.
I love it. Steve Irwin, I lived in Australia back when before he passed, and yeah, everybody loved him there. You either loved him or hated him, I feel like, in Australia. But no,
Yeah.
he was definitely very loved. David, do you get the benefit of having both then, I guess? Do you get a little bit of like above and below the surface for regulation?
Yeah, no, I'm like incredibly grateful to be in the regulatory position that I'm in. So like wing and ground vehicles, ground effect vehicles, sea gliders, whatever you want to call them, are certified and regulated by the Coast Guard and not the FAA. And so
Oh
like
wow.
on a technical level, like what we're building is like crafts. And so there have been like billions and billions of dollars poured into like advanced urban mobility startups, EV tolls, whatever, and none of them have like flown commercial flights, and a lot of them have like burned their billions and shut down. In part because like getting through all the regulatory like systems is like a nigh impossible task. And like I'm not going to be one to say that like the FAA should be easier to like get certified by, because like if you are flying a plane and you're flying people over populated areas, like I want that to be as safe as possible. And like we saw, like even with some of the Boeing stuff, it's like those standards exist for a reason. Um, but like our vehicles are fully unmanned and we're flying over water in not populated areas. And so we have the advantage of being certified by the Coast Guard there. And so that's going to be a really big headwind in terms of it being able to like enter the market and get moving as fast as possible.
Yeah, I love it. I feel like we kind of went through 20 minutes of talking about the hard stuff. I'd love to finish it and then kind of keep going a little bit on some of the cool stuff and the most exciting stuff, because I think there's a lot to be excited about. So maybe Nelson, starting with you, if we could, to Will's point, wave a magic wand and have all these problems solved and everything goes in your favor and everything works out over the next decade or so, where do you see your company evolving into, and kind of what does that look like in the perfect world a decade or so from now?
Yeah, I mean, our goal is to build an underwater autonomy prime. We do commercial and defense, but we're pretty focused on defense, and for us that means building a vertical stack of products through single agent, multi-agent autonomy, our navigation software, algorithms, and the actual hardware, and build from there like a suite of products that builds on each other. So we can start owning underwater collaboration and battle space management, and then our vehicles can start doing commercial work. We're going to start doing some stuff with undersea cable inspection and installation pretty soon, and then scale up to bigger vehicles. I have big dreams of the first micronuclear reactor powered UUV, XL UUV one day, right? Like, there's a lot of fun stuff to do, but hopefully do it with respect and preservation of the ocean too, right? I think it is a huge issue, and we want to be part of that journey too, as much as we also build weapons.
Love that. So you think, is there, beyond even some of the defense side, what are some of the applications that you're most excited about over the next decade or so?
Yeah, I mean, I think more sensors in the ocean, gathering data, better understanding what's happening is going to be super important. If we're going to start mining the ocean, and I have a lot of trepidation around that, but if we're going to do it, like, we've got to figure out a safe way to do it, a way in which we're monitoring exactly what's happening and the effects of that on the ocean. I think that's kind of where I would like to see us doing more work on that. Yeah, and then there are oceans in space too. So I always keep telling people this.
There we go. Oh, I love it. Didn't even think about
that. I read a article in Popular Mechanics, I think when I was like 10, about this idea of sending a mission to the moon of one of the moons of Jupiter, right? That's like got an ocean under ice. They're going to drill through it and like throw an underwater vehicle in there. And now I'm like, you know what? Maybe I should call up NASA and talk about that.
I didn't even think about that, but now that's a whole other episode we're gonna have to do eventually. Maybe 10 years from now, we'll have another one where ocean is in space, and then we'll do a whole thing on that. That'd be good.
Yes, space oceans, next market.
Space oceans. Will, how about you? Predicting 10 years ahead, the perfect place that Ulysses will be like. What is the 10-year dream of not only what you build, but then what that unlocks maybe for the world? What can we all get excited about there?
Oh yeah, I have lots of schizo ideas on what better technology in the ocean can unlock. Better first talk about Ulysses. Yeah, I mean, look, for us, we want to build like this infrastructure layer for the ocean, right? Like this enabling factor. Again, like as I was saying at the top of this call, like we're very firmly of the belief that the rate limiting factor on doing beautiful and incredible things that inspire humanity, with our oceans is we don't have enough hands, right? Like we don't have enough assets, we don't have enough people. The ocean is absolutely massive, and at any moment in time, there's maybe thousands of people working on it. Whereas the Earth is half the size, and there's billions of people on it, right? Like there's just a disparity here, and if we want to really unlock this resource, that means just a lot more robots, a lot more eyes, ears, hands. I think so. I think it's this yeah, that's the vision. It's it's more vehicles at surface, at subsurface. It's more implements. It's robotic hands. It's all crazy stuff. It's in a few years, we're gonna have chips that we can put into the the size they can put in my hand that has the intelligence of human. Put that into a funny looking underwater robot, and I'm sure there's a lot of cool things you can do across the world of nature, which is where we're very focused to begin with, nature and climate. But then another part of this is just prosperous oceans. The next century is very much going to be one defined by artificial intelligence, the infrastructure that supports this build out both on the energy and the data side, run across our oceans all over the world. We're seeing now as well data centers are actually much more efficient when they're put in the ocean as well from a cooling and cost perspective. So I think you're just going to have more of that. You need a service layer for that and for the various tasks involved with that. And then as we mentioned as well, defense, natural, there's a lot of money going to be going into this space. So across these three domains, I think these will all need autonomous robots for different tasks. These are the kind of things that we want to do. We want to, give humanity full read and write access on the ocean. Like for the longest time, we've had, we've just traversed the surface, and then we started like looking underneath it and mapping, and Captain Cook was going around. Still all very like read only access, right? We haven't been able to fully master it and take full dominion and steward it appropriately. So I think, these are the sorts of technologies that like we want to build at Ulysses. If I start thinking like bigger picture about like what are we doing with the ocean, I think there's a few different areas. Like in the world of nature, one use case that like very much excites me is this ability to like speak with whales and dolphins. We're seeing like these like models coming out of Gemini right now, trained on like massive sonar data sets, and I mean, the question I'm thinking is like, what do we say? Like, what's the first thing you say? It's like, sorry, maybe. I think something like that, perhaps. Like, but this ability to communicate with animals, I think, is like very interesting from just just like the advancement of mankind. I think about that a lot. Some interesting defense use cases as well. If you could get the dolphins on your side, maybe some interesting things you could do with that.
Oh, wow. Who's the first one? It's just like from Jurassic Park where they try to weaponize the raptors. We're gonna have dolphins running around, smart, intelligent dolphins. Yeah.
Yeah. So
They're already
ahead.
at it, so watch out.
Yeah, exactly.
Are they really? Is that something that people are working on? Is that what you guys are working on, Nelson, internally?
No, yeah.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Watch RoboShark coming soon. So that's one. I think like as I mentioned there, this kind of full read and write. Our vision with the kind of seagrass stuff is like this like full like read and write ecosystem management, right? Like if the government of Polynesia comes to us and it's like, we need our fisheries replenished, it's like, oh, here we go. We just like press this button and you like restore these ecosystems. That's like kind of having a closed loop, I think, on ecosystem management, I think is like a very like exciting prospect that I think is like, it's tractable. It's a complex system. So it's like, not like fully tractable, but I think there's interesting use cases there around restoration, sensors, like reading what's going on, but also the physical manipulation of these environments. And that has massive downstream consequences on fisheries. 3 billion people rely on fisheries as their primary source of protein, a billion as their primary source of income. So I think it's like very important that we not make them collapse. I think another like variable in this like read and write access in the ocean is like the kind of the taboo question of like geoengineering in the ocean, whether it be on the fisheries / carbon side, you have like ocean iron fertilization, which is I think like very extremely like very interesting, very promising. The basic concept is there's certain parts of the ocean where it's like iron deficient, and if you add iron, you it's very good. It's very good. Basically, you get like algae grows and then it dies and it falls to the bottom and it sequesters carbon, but it also creates food stores for these fish. So the thing is, you want to get it right? You don't want to fuck it up and have like negative downstream consequences. But someone did this before in Canada, and the following year it was a bit controversial. You can look it up, Russ George, geoengineering. And that same year, they had the biggest ever salmon catch they've ever seen. This like billionaire was like, he has this banger quote where he's like, give me a tanker of iron filings, and I will give you an ice age. Like how that goes like insanely hard. So I think that's interesting. I think it's interesting kind of this notion of stewardship. Another one is like treasure hunting. I think like there is like so much like
do you have a number? What's the number of treasure that's like waiting to be discovered?
Billions. There's a wreck off the coast of Colombia that has about $20 billion of emerald and gold on board. Now the thing is, right, you can't keep the 20 billion if you find it. There's a international law that says you have to share it with the country that if it's in waters, it's the country that the waters are, so it's Colombia in this instance. But if it's in Atlantic waters, like then it's and it's outside, it's international waters, then you have to negotiate with Spain or Portugal, which is generally where these were coming from. They were coming and taking from South America and bringing.
So it's where they originated from. That's where you'd have to negotiate in those waters. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I think there is a big business waiting to be built, like an actual, people talk about these like search funds, like an actual search fund searching for treasure. I think someone is going to do that and make a lot of money, and, contact Nelson or Will if you want to like get some cool undersea tech for that. Like we'd love to help. So I think I mean, there's Nelson mentioned the mining thing. There's two different types of mining. There's like sweep mining and there's pick and place mining. We need pick and place mining, not just like hoovering up whatever's down there. And then I'll just come back to like the Peter Thiel dream of the early 2000s, seasteading. I think this is like still has like a lot of legs. I still think someone can do this. Building in the ocean, in international waters, you can do some interesting regulatory things from like biotech perspective and others. And it could just be like a nice holiday as well to just like land on the ocean. So I think seasteading, there is still people working on it. I think now is actually time to revive it. It became a bit, crap for a while, but yeah.
Do you guys think that I talked to a lot of people, I feel like, where they're like, oh, we're running out of space or overpopulated planet, but there is so much space in the ocean, and obviously we're all thinking about going to Mars and the moon and all those types of things. But do you feel like it's maybe not equally as likely, and this goes back to your earlier point, Will, where we don't really have the vision of living in the ocean as we do like living on Mars or on the moon? But do you think that there's a possibility where we would have like cities in the ocean, either on top or below?
I think
People are going to,
go
It's
ahead.
Atlantis. We got to
I was
build
going to
that.
say, people are going to start building on the giant Pacific trash pile pretty soon, I think.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's some really cool startups doing that. But if anything, though, David, this is where maybe you're going to shine, is that you're going to all of a sudden have a boom in people getting from the coast all the way into these cities in the middle of the ocean really quickly, or traveling between these little cities.
So to build Atlantis, like we have to revive the dream of Atlantis. This is like
we need the Elon for like the ocean to all of a sudden have these crazy ideas of rebuilding Atlantis and building in these cities in the ocean too.
Atlantis. I mean,
I think
Atlantis
it could be
is
feasible.
probably in the Atlantic. It's probably on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. So yeah, I think it would be nice to have in the Atlantis. It would be a nice halfway house for me between Ireland and the US.
There you go.
Well,
and honestly, and this is going very Black Mirror here, but the whales probably know. So maybe as soon as we start talking to these animals, they're going to tell us all the secrets of all these things. We're going to have these agents of the ocean telling us all these things.
Yeah,
it's the secret for the treasure hunting. You just got to ask the whales.
I was just going to say.
Yeah.
That's what's going to be the unlock. The same way that we're thinking SpaceX is unlocking these companies, it's going to be talking to the dolphins and the whales to unlock all of these other secrets.
Fish food is going to become really valuable resource. So maybe just like start hoarding fish food right now and like tin sardines and stuff, and then you're like the trillionaire of like the ocean century if you have like the most sardines.
David, on your side though, giving you some time to chat about the future of what you're building with Poseidon. What are some of the things that you think over the next decade, if you could, again, wave a magic wand, everything goes exactly as planned and maybe even better, what does the world look like for you and what you're building? What does it unlock for everybody else if what you're doing works?
Yeah. So in 10 years, everything goes right. A significant percentage of ocean marine cargo is getting moved on sea gliders. Sea gliders become like primary mode of cargo and logistics transportation for both like defense and commercial use, right alongside with like shipping containers and air freight. And I think we can really build much bigger. And so like we've like produced the Seagull. It's a 13-foot wingspan vehicle, producing,
which is beautiful, by the way.
Appreciate it. Thank you. We're doing the Heron right now, which was going to be like roughly 50-foot wingspan, 2-ton payload. And that gets you like very competitive with like regional and island air cargo. But the step after that is you can build much, much bigger. Ground effect is awesome because as you scale your wingspan, you get a lot more benefit out of it. It's actually like a very positive scaling factor. And so like one of the like the major large like air vehicles that we're using for like cargo logistics right now is like the 737 platform, and that carries 28 or 23 tons of useful payload. When the Soviets were building their ground effect vehicles, the Caspian Sea Monster, as we called it, because we actually saw it on a satellite in the Black Sea, and we were like, or the Caspian Sea, and we were like, what the hell is that thing? That carried 280 tons of payload. And that wasn't the biggest vehicle that they had vision for. And this thing flew. Like it's been done. It's possible. Like wheel or churn. I have visions for 300-ton vehicle. And you can go bigger. Like there's been some crazy blueprints for these things. So yeah, we're gonna go really, really big.
I love it. We could talk forever, and we didn't do as much on the origin story side. So we'll have to do maybe a different episode on that. But I do want to end this with, Will, you mentioned a bunch of them, but maybe around the horn, we'll do two sets of things to close it off. The first is, what area besides what you're building in specifically are you the most excited about? So, Will, you're gonna have to pick one, and then we'll cap it off with sharing some of the things that you need right now as a business if you're hiring, fundraising, all these different pieces. But maybe Nelson, starting with you, what is the one area outside of defense or even maybe underwater autonomous vehicles are you most excited about being unlocked over the next decade or so?
I'm all in on Will's idea of talking to whales, dolphins.
I mean,
He's
it's hard to beat
convinced me.
that. Once it's been said, it's hard to pick anything else.
Yeah, hard to go back. But I think, yeah, it's a great question. I think there's a lot to be done with making shipping more environmentally friendly. And, right now we use like the dirtiest possible like sludge of oil and burn a ton of it. It's very efficient and cost effective from a cost perspective, but from an environmental perspective, I would love to see some unlock towards making shipping greener. So yeah. Was
Are
there a second
there
part to that
any
question?
companies off the top of your mind that are? I know that like Clipper Ship is doing stuff like that. There's obviously, I mean, electric boats and things, but at scale, is there anybody that you can think of that's kind of trying to build that future?
Yeah, there's definitely there's a few people trying to build the future. I'm not sure I've seen something yet where I'm like, yeah, I think that can be at the same scale of costs as what we currently have. That being said, maybe we just have to accept that shipping goods will be more expensive. I mean, all goods are more expensive right now, and look at we're still alive so far.
Well, my
But
guess is
yeah,
that
everything.
one of the companies on here, Poseidon, will be able to at least eliminate the cost of a lot of those as it relates to where today things are being put on a boat and putting the sludge through the water where they wouldn't need to, and hopefully soon. So that'll be one of those solutions there. Well, do you have any companies that that are building some of the like electric and or just more environmentally friendly transport on the ocean?
Yeah, there's a few I suppose the real thing is shipping, right? Like that's 3% of global emissions. That's insane, right? Like
That's crazy. Yeah.
so there's people obviously building little boats, but like yeah, there hasn't been anyone yet that's like struck me as like, oh wow, they're building the replacement for kind of shipping diesel powered stuff. So yeah, I'm not thinking smart there.
Wide open. Well, wide open for somebody to maybe solve it, at least on the surface. David's already solving it above the surface. David, to you, what is the number one thing that you get excited about as relates to the ocean that isn't involving aerospace or what you're doing?
I think, and this is also one of the things Will mentioned, like seasteading is incredibly exciting, and the opportunities there, like the regulatory framework for being able to do a lot of like experiments and research, like outside the purview potentially, but also just like as like building, like it would be awesome to like have my own like little property, like 360 surrounded by
Yeah.
and
Oh
just
yeah.
running around in the middle of nowhere.
I mean, did everybody here watch Waterworld? I feel like Waterworld is one of those movies that's like underrated. I've watched it even. I still love it, and it got
Yeah,
like horrible reviews. But that's the future I think of when you mention that, David. Maybe we need to work our way towards it.
my brother and I's favorite movie.
Yeah.
Still watch it.
Yeah, it stood the test of time too. But we need our planes to go from each other's houses in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, and if you want to get like started on like seasteading, like you can ostensibly buy a really old, decrepit like cargo container ship, like one of the smaller ones, and you could like just park it in the middle of like a few miles off the coast in international waters. And
I
they're
think
not that
you
expensive. So if someone wants to
Start
spend a
your own
couple
country.
Yeah.
buying,
Well, I think actually the move is like in the next crypto bull run, we convince we like co-opt like all of their like undeservedly earned money, and we convince them to do like a crypto community. We get Balaji or something like that, and we buy one of these like cruise ships and then just like sink it there.
I'm
People are
surprised.
try-
I know I've seen some of those, but there needs to be more of the like cruise ship people buying cruise ships and or these big container ships, and doing like big old like co-working spaces type of thing, and starting them on there.
Yeah.
So, Will, do you have one that you could? You mentioned a bunch of them. Is there
Yeah,
one that you could pick that you think is?
It'd be awesome to speak to Wells novels, just to add another one in there and to bring attention to it. I do think like geoengineering is just going to be a necessity for this century. It's so clear we're not going to meet like any of our like kind of like targets, and also like it's not even like just to meet like global warming targets. There's this like great Stuart Brand quote. It's like, we are as gods, we may as well start acting like it, right? Like it's like this, like, you know, it's not even just like you should you know, brighten the marine clouds or something like that. It's like, oh, if you have the capability, you actually have to. There is like I'm Catholic, and there's like this notion of like stewardship or whatever. You know, God gave us like dominion over the earth and the seas. But you know, dominion implies domination. It's not domination. It's like actually, you know, the stewardship mandate as well. He asks us to tend to it. So it's actually our responsibility to, you know, again, read and write functionality like on the biosphere, and that's why I think these like ocean iron fertilization, marine cloud brightening, these are how we like stop like the coral reefs from getting like totally bleached, right? And like we just lose them forever. This is like how we like stop like fisheries collapse and like, you know, 1 billion people going out without their primary source of income, 3 billion without their primary source of protein. Like it's like actually just like manning up and being like, yeah, obviously the science is like controversial, like we need to do like testing, but being like, we're kind of like running out of time. And I think like that future is like very beautiful when we develop these tools, right? Because then all of a sudden, like, it's not like, oh, we're running out of carbon emissions, we must turn off the global economy. It's like, actually, let's go full pelt on growing the global economy, grow the size of the pie, because we have all the tools in our, you know, these like stewardship tools in our toolkit, whether it be like you know, people like, you know, making it rain, or people making like the fisheries like restored, like, or bringing the seagrasses back. I think that's where I would love to see just like a killer massive company built. I just think it's so sci-fi, it's so fucking cool, and like it's
I know.
needed.
It's there's a lot of Black Mirror episodes that could be happening in the ocean in the next decade or so. So I think there's there's some exciting pieces. So what was that?
This is White Mirror. This is optimistic.
Yeah, it's so exactly.
Hopeful. This is not Black Mirror.
It's just around the corner. Thank you guys so much for hopping on this. Like I said, I want to finish with going around the horn, a quick, you know, what you need, what you're looking for right now, what's going on right now, like a CTA, so to speak, on what you're building. David, maybe kick it off. What do you need right now? What are you trying to do right now?
Yeah, if you like BD in either the business development sense or buying drinks, hit me up.
It's the same thing. It means the same thing. Yeah,
very much. But yeah, I think that's we're definitely hiring the BD and expanding the go-to-market team here.
Love it. Nelson, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, we're hiring across the board, engineering, business development, etc. So if you guys want to work for a cool company and live in Rhode Island, or maybe BD Washington DC, then hit us up. Particularly some great test engineers. If you've got a captain's license and like to drive boats around and chase underwater vehicles, look us up.
Nice. Yeah.
Will.
Yeah. Same. Looking for bright minds, people who like being out at sea, people who like being shipped off to different corners of the world to work on exciting frontier projects. If that like excites you, being posted in somewhere like Virginia, Florida, Australia, the Middle East, other locations where we're doing work, Asia. Ulysses.eco/jobs, join us on the frontier, the great blue frontier.
I love it. Well, again, thank you guys for joining. It was the first recording. It'll probably be the first episode that we launch as well. So you guys get to be the guinea pigs. I hope people thought it was fun and exciting. We'll do a lot more of these. I think doing more on the ocean in general, I think there's just so much to cover. We talked about energy. We talked about mining. We talked about talking whales. I think there's each one of those is an individual episode. So I'm excited to keep the conversation going.
Thanks for having us. Oceans and space, you too. So.
Yeah.
Let the cables hum, code and cannon ready, futures beating like a drum. Charts are drawn in circuits, treasure maps and AI. We're sailing for the edge where bold ideas never die.